Okay, we should be all set, ready to go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Music Maniacs is here once again. Me, Dr. Earl, along with Arknolia Bean. And tonight, we're continuing our series of influential albums that really made a big dent in pop culture and that dent still remains to this very day. And we're going to be taking a look at another influential influencing album that really needless to say is the big daddy of top selling albums. Now we often hear about Michael Jackson's Thriller being the biggest selling albums. We often heard about the Boston album, the first album, being one of the rock and roll's best selling albums. Whitney Houston's first record that did extremely well. I remember hearing how well Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA was a top seller. And we cannot forget all the albums that Garth Brooks released it throughout much of the 1990s. He was selling hotcakes left and right. But to all their fans, sorry to let you know, this album right here eats those artists for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I'm speaking, of course, Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd. It was their eighth studio album. It came out in March of 1973, and it would go on to sell over how many thousands of copies? Let's see here. It would remain on the Billboard's Top 200 for over 15 years, ladies and gentlemen. 15 years. And it's considered one of the most critically acclaimed albums and often features in professional listings as the greatest album of all time. It brought Pink Floyd international fame, wealth, and to respect to all band members. A blockbuster release of the album era. It also propelled record sales throughout the music industry in the 1970s. It is certified 14 times platinum in the United Kingdom, topped the US Billboard Top Albums and Tape charts, where it has charted for about 988 weeks. And as of 2013, the album had sold over 45 million copies worldwide, making it the Floyd's best selling release, the best selling album of the 1970s, and the fourth best selling albums in history. In 2012, the album was selected for preservation in the United States National Recording Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. It was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 1999, and it was built upon experiments that Pink Floyd had attempted in their previous live performances and recordings. Although it lacked the extended instrumental incursions, which, according to David Flick of Rolling Stone, have become characteristic of the band following the departure or firing of their founding member, Sid Barrett, in 1968. Barrett's replacement, David Gilmour, later referred to those instrumentals as that psychedelic noodling stuff. He and Roger Waters, bassist and lyricist, co-vocalist, cited their album Meadow, which came out in 1971, as a turning point towards what would later be released on the album. The Dark Side of the Moon's lyrical themes include conflict, greed, the passage of time, death, and insanity, and the last being in part inspired by Barrett's deteriorating mental. As we all know, his mental state was going off the deep end, and the album contains mystique concrete on several. What's it called here? Music con. What's that word here? Some of the name goes. It's
Spell it.
Okay, it's a music with a Q instead of a C, U E,
Musique.
musique, and it's concrete, but yet it's French.
Right.
Okay, it's a type of music composition that utilizes recorded sounds as raw material. Sounds are often modified through the application of audio signal processing and tape music techniques, and may be assembled into a form of sound collage. I think they're talking about the people speaking that they recorded it for the album. I guess it was members of their road crew that they were speaking to. I guess they had all these different cards, and I guess he talked it to the tape recorder, and he used those recordings throughout the whole album. It
Yeah.
was engineered by Mr. Alan Parsons, who would later go on to form his own project, the Alan Parsons Project, as you all know. They released many albums with conceptual themes on each one, including I, Robot, Pyramid, Tales of Mystery and Imagination. And each side of the vinyl album has a continuous piece of music. The five tracks on each side reflect various stages of human life, beginning and ending with a heartbeat, exploring the nature of the human experience. And according to Roger Waters, empathy, speak to me and breathe together highlight the mundane and the futile elements of life that accompany the ever present threat of madness and the importance of living one's own life. Don't be afraid to care, the lyric and breathe. By shifting the scene towards an airport, the synthesizer rhythm, On the Run, evokes the stress and the anxiety of the modern travel, in particular, Richard Wright's fear of flying. The song Time examines the manner in which its passage can control one's life, and often a stark warning to those who remain focused on mundane pursuits. It is followed by a retreat into solitude and withdrawal with Breathe Reprise. The first side of the album ends with Richard Wright and vocalist Claire Torrey's soulful metaphor for death, the great gig in the sky. The opening track of the side two, Money, opens with the sound of various cash registers and rhythmically jingling coins. It mocks greed, consumerism, with sarcastic lyrics and cash related sound effects. Money became the band's most commercially successful track for the album and was covered by various other artists, including this one project called Rosebud. I guess it was a disco version of that song, along with a disco version of Have a Cigar. I remember
I wouldn't be familiar with that.
I remember seeing it in a old thrift shop years ago back in Michigan. I was like, hmm. And I'm still whooping my ass for not purchasing that disc because I wanted to hear for myself to decide, hey, this is like a keepsake. Now, Us and Then, which follows Money, addresses the isolation of the depressed with the symbolism of conflict and the use of simple, whatever they call it, dichotomies, Dichotomies.
Dichotomies.
Yeah, thank you. To describe personal relationships. Any color you like, another instrumental, tackles the illusion of the choice one has in society. Brain damage looks at mental illness resulting from the elevation of fame and success above the needs of the self. In particular, the line, and if the band you're in starts playing a different tune, that line reflects the mental breakdown of former bandmate Sid Barrett. And the album ends with the track Eclipse, which imposes the concept of otherness and unity while encouraging the listener to recognize the common traits shared by humanity. It came out in 1973. And how how do you think this album did so incredibly well? And how would you think was it able to last on the Billboard charts as long as it did?
I think it strikes a chord in people. I
That's
think
true.
they basically can relate. I don't know. Hard to explain. That's basically how I saw it.
When I first heard about this record, I remember a lot of radio stations were playing tracks like Money. I remember there was this one local radio station playing the album in its entirety on a Sunday evening. It was a thing called 7 at 7, where they played 7 albums all the way through from start to finish. And I was listening, and one of the albums they featured was Dark Side of the Moon. I was like, wow, this is interesting stuff here. Wow. I remember when I first got it from the nearby Harmony House store, which was an old music store chain that eventually evaporated in the later 90s. I know that my sister, when I first showed her that what I just got, she was like, oh, that's the main one right there. That's the one that everybody loves. That's the big one right there. And wouldn't you know, she was correct. It was the big one. And the cool thing about it is that it came with two posters, one of the band in performance and the other of the desert in Egypt with what's all green with a pyramid to complete. I saw that. I was like, wow, man, I got to hang this up in my room for sure, man, because this is one unique poster. Now, the sleeve, the poster, and everything else was designed by, of course, Storm Thorgerson and Aubrey Powell, aka Hypnosis, who right now are the subject of a documentary film detailing their work and their lives. The name escapes me at the moment, unfortunately, but I want to check that movie out, that's for sure, along with the King Crimson documentary. Now, the album was originally released as a gatefold LP sleeve, designed by, of course, the two guys I mentioned, and a dude named George Hardy. Hypnosis had designed several of the band's previous albums, including Meadow, Amagama, and a few others. They will also go on to design the sleeves for Wish You Were Here, Animals. Now, they had all those designs had controversial results, and EMI had reached with confusion when faced with the cover designs for both Adam Hart Mother and Obscured by Clouds, the soundtrack to this French movie called The Valley, as they had expected to see traditional designs, which included lettering, words. The designers, Thorgerson and Powell, were able to ignore such criticism as they were employed by the band for Dark Side of the Moon. Richard Wright suggested something smarter, neater, more classy, and simply like the artwork of a black magic chocolate box. It was inspired by a photograph of a prism with a beam of white light projected through it and emerging in the colors of the visible spectrum that Thorgerson had found in the 1963 physics textbook, as well as an illustration by a dude named Alex Steinwest, the inventor of the album cover art for the New York Philharmonic 1942 performance of Ludwig van Beethoven's Emperor Concerto. The artwork was created by associate of Hypnosis, George Hardy, and Hypnosis offered a choice of 7 designs for the sleeve. But all 4 members of Floyd agreed that the prism was the best. Roger Waters said there were no arguments. We all pointed to the prism and we said, that's the one. Now, the glass prism is depicted on the design, dispersing white light into colors. It represents three elements: the band's stage lighting, the album lyrics, and Wright's request for a simple and bold design. At Waters' suggestion, the spectrum of light continues throughout the gatefold. Added shortly afterwards, the gatefold design also includes a visual representation of the heartbeat sound used throughout the album. And the back of the album cover contains Thorgenson's suggestion of another prism recombining the spectrum of light, making it possible interesting layouts of sleeve in record shops. The light band elementing from the prism on the album cover has six colors, missing what's it called? Indigo. Indigo. My bad, that's what it's called there. Never saw that word before. Compared with the usual division of the visible spectrum into the red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. Inside the sleeve were two posters, the ones I described, pictures of the band in one, and also a photograph of the Great Pyramids at Giza, created by both Powell and Thorgenson. And the band was so confident of the quality of the lyrics written by Roger Waters, they printed them on the album's sleeve. Now, there was also a quadraphonic mix of the album that was not then complete. The band, with the exception of Wright, boycotted the press reception held by the London Planetarium on February 27th. The guests were instead presented with a quartet of life-size card, mm, cardboard cutouts of the band, and the stereo mix of the album was played over a poor quality public access system. Generally, however, the press were enthusiastic. One of the writers from Melody Maker described side one as so utterly confused with itself it was difficult to follow, but praised side two, saying that the songs, the sounds, the rhythms were solid and sound. Saxophone hit the air, the band rocked and rolled, and then gushed and tripped away into the night. Steve Peacock from Sounds wrote, I don't care if you have never heard a note of the Floyd's music in your life. I recommend everyone to The Dark Side of the Moon. And in his review of the album, Rolling Stone magazine writer Lloyd Grossman declared Dark Side a fine album with a textual and conceptual richness that not
Conceptual.
yeah, conceptual richness that not only invites but demands involvement. Now, another critic, Robert Christgau, it's the word Christ with the G-A-U at the end of it, he found the lyrics ideas glitch and its musical
Cliche.
cliche. Thank you. Remember, these are words that I've never used in my life, so forgive me, folks, if I'm misspelling some of these words. We're so used to using the basic words that we so used to using. So when you come across a different word, you're like, huh? How do you pronounce this? So my apologies to everybody out there. He called it a Kinsic masterpiece that could be charming with highlights such as taped speech fragments, Dak Perry's saxophone, and studio elements which enhance Gilmore's guitar solos. It was released in March 1st, 1973, and then in the UK on March 16th. It became an instant chart success in England and throughout Western Europe. By the following month, and it gained a gold certification in the US. Throughout March 1973, the band played the album in its entirety in part of their US tour, including a midnight performance at Radio City Music Hall in New York City. On March 17th, before an audience of 6,000, the album reached the Billboard top LPs and tape charts at number one on April 28th of that year, and was so successful that the band returned 2 months later for another tour. Now, check
And
this
ac-
out. Go ahead.
and actually on their Pulse tour, they again played the album in its entirety.
Exactly there, because a year before it was, well, I guess it was their 20th anniversary that that album came out.
Um,
Yeah, I believe so. It was 20 years ago that that album came out the previous year, and I guess to commemorate that, they decided to play that in its entirety. Now, I got to go on to this part of the story here. Much of the album's early American success is attributed to the efforts of their U.S. label, Capitol Records. Now, throughout that time, up until they signed with Columbia CBS, Floyd had recorded for a division of Capitol Records called Harvest Records. Now, the newly appointed chairman of Capitol Records set about trying to reverse the relatively poor sales of the band's album Medell. Meanwhile, disenchanted with Capitol, the band and their manager, Stephen O'Rourke, had quietly been negotiated a new contract with Clyde Davis of CBS Records to be on that label's division, Columbia Records. Dark Side of the Moon was the last album that Pink Floyd were obliged to record for Capitol Records before signing with this new contract. The enthusiasm for the album was such that he began a huge promotional advertising campaign, which included radio friendly versions of both Time and Us and Them. In
which
some co-
generally means they cut them.
Yeah, exactly. They edited it down. They do that back then. They had to do that for tracks that were over about 7 minutes or 6 minutes long. In fact, yes, I guess the only one that was still able to get away with it was "Hey Jude" by the Beatles.
But again, you're talking about the Beatles.
Exactly. In some countries, notably in the UK, the Floyd had not released a single since "Point Me to the Sky" back in 1968, and then unusually, "Money" was released as a single on May 7th, with "Any Color You Like" as the B side. It reached number 13 on the Billboard's Hot 100 in July 1973. A two-sided white label promotional version of the single with mono and stereo mixes was sent to various radio stations. The mono side had the word bullshit removed from the song, leaving bull in its place. However, the studio side retained the uncensored version. This was because, of course, back then, curse words were not allowed on the radio. Of course, later on throughout some of the stations in the 80s, they would allow that on the various FM stations, but later as time progressed, it would once again be censored. Now, in February of the next year, the following year, I meant to say, a double day AI, a double A side single was released with Time on one side and Us and Them on the other side. The efforts by the Capitol executive was to secure a contract renewal with Pink Floyd were in vain, however, at the beginning of 1974. The band had officially signed with Columbia CBS for a reported advance fee of $1 million. In Britain and it says here parentheses, in Britain and Europe, they continue to be represented by Harvest Records. And the sales of the album became one of the ultra big events of the band's career. In the top 25 of a list of best selling albums in the United States, it was one of the best selling albums, although it held the number one spot in the US for only a week. It remained in the Billboard Top 200 album charts for 736 non consecutive weeks, from March of 1973 to July of 1988. And let's not forget, it came back to the charts when the Division Bell was released. And also came back on the chart. No, it was still on the charts when the Momentary Lapse of Reason was released. That was back in 1987. Of those first 736 weeks, the album had two notable consecutive runs in the Billboard 200. 84 weeks from 1973 to October of 1974, and 593 weeks from 76 to 1988. It made its final appearance in the Billboard 200 during its initial run in the week ending 8th of October 1988. Now, it reappeared on the Billboard charts with the introduction of the top pop catalog albums, and that was in May of 1991. It was still a prudential feature 10 years later. It reached number one on the pop catalog charts when the 2003 hybrid CD/SACD edition was released and sold about 800,000 copies here in the US. On the week of May 5th, 2006, Dark Side of the Moon achieved a combined total of 1,716 weeks on the Billboard Top 200 and Pop Catalog charts. After a change in chart methodology in 2009, which allowed catalog titles to be inducted into the Billboard 200, Dark Side of the Moon returned to the charts at number 189 on December of that year, and for that year, during making it its 742nd charting week. It has continued to appear on the Billboard's 200 since that, with a total of 988 weeks on the charts as of January 2024. Now, there have been many box set versions of the album. One that just came out actually last year, commemorating 50 years of the album's release. And this came, of course, with various photographs, new liner notes, new designs. And there was also a live at Wembley version that was released along just as well, that was recorded in Wembley Stadium. I heard snippets and tracks from that release, and I would say it was most interesting to hear live. That's for sure.
The Pulse Seed DVD,
Yep.
if you watch that entire Dark Side of the Moon live performance, it'll blow you away.
Yeah. I remember seeing the version of Time performed from that performance, and it's like I noticed that they came up with new graphics for the video introduction of Time. They're incorporating the two heads for the Division Bell album cover into that little sequence there. And of course, they performed that album with top notch as always, thanks to David Gilmour leading the band at that period.
Yeah.
Yep. It's kind of, and it's also fits to say that At times, the cover of that album often got spoofed, lampooned. Like, for example, instead of the prism, we have Darth Vader's helmet, and it's called Dark Side of Force, obviously. I saw that a couple of times in the past. And of course, we there was a compilation I remember seeing at a place called Car City Records in Harper Woods, Michigan. And it was called Dork Side of the Moon. And instead of a prism, it was a big pair of black rimmed glasses. You know, the kind of glasses that dorks wear. You used to seeing all these TV bop movies in the 70s and 80s. And if it's to say that Dark Side of the Moon made an impact, no doubt about that.
Yeah, and there was the thing for a long time, if you played Dark Side of the Moon along with Wizard of Oz,
Yeah.
it sounded like it was foretelling the movie or talking about the movie.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know who came up with that idea. Someone must have been high on acid or something like that. But what they did is that you start the album at the start of The Wizard of Oz, and simultaneously, the sound effects, the tracks, and everything else, which is fitted to some of the scenes of the movie. Like the beginning of Money would start at the when the Munchkins would come out. And by the way, for the record, according to Nick Mason, Dark Side of the Moon had nothing to do with Wizard of Oz whatsoever. And when you,
It's just kind of weird the way that it worked out.
yeah, it is. But here's the question I want to know. The album itself is over 40 minutes long. What are you going to use for the rest of the movie? Another Pink Floyd album?
Yeah, it's the only thing I can figure.
Exactly.
But it was kind of weird because I did it, played it along with the movie once. It
Hmm.
was kind of weird because some parts did sound like it was talking about the movie.
Sequenced together, basically what you're saying.
Yeah, which we know it didn't, but it was still kind of interesting.
I remember hearing about this on the late night talk show. I guess Gil Gross was the guy's name. God, I miss listening to that guy. I would hear his program late at night around 1 in the morning, and they were discussing that situation there. And I guess what it was is that for those who still have the vinyl release of the album or the current vinyl version, you probably have to pause Dark Side of the Moon in order to turn the album over to play side two.
Right.
Yeah. Now, keep in mind, I guess you'll here's something else about the contract with Columbia. I guess we'll understand as a part of this new deal. If I'm incorrect about this, feel free to correct me. I guess part of the deal with Columbia CBS was that they would have full ownership to the rights of their recordings. Because with Wish You Were Here on throughout the rest of their releases with Columbia, it would say copyright and patented Pink Floyd Music Unlimited. So meaning that Pink Floyd now owns the rights of their Columbia catalog. And years on down the line, they would now own the rights to all their recordings, including the first album, Saucerful of Secrets, Amagama. All the recordings are now owned by Pink Floyd, which is good because this way the Floyd are able to prevent all these obscure compilations that Capitol Records will put out of the blue of the various songs that we heard many times before, like this one called Works, featuring tracks from the earlier albums, like the two first records, a couple others from Dark Side of the Moon. And remember, there was this one version. There was this one re-recorded version of Money that came out on the 1981 compilation called a collection of great dance songs. And included on that was Dogs, Sheep from the album Animals, Another Brick in the Wall Part 2, the 45 version of that song, and of course the re-recorded version of Money.
Yeah, like
Now,
everybody's gonna dance to Pink Floyd.
yeah, it's kind of hard to, unless it's the only one I could think of that would be able to do that was, of course, Money. That's about it because of the beat. But it's kind of hard to dance to Sheep. That's for shizzle. And now, sadly, as we all know, Pink Floyd officially called it quits in 2014 with The Endless River, a bunch of instrumental tracks, and it was devoted to the memory of Richard Wright, who passed away in 2008 from cancer. Roger Waters had nothing to do with that recording, and nor did he have anything to do with the Hey Hey Rise Up single that came out, I guess it was in 2002 during the midst of the Russian Ukrainian war. And basically, it featured vocals from a guy, I forgot his name, but he was the singer for some Ukrainian band. And when he found out about this, I guess he had to go over there and fight for his country. I guess he sang that song. It caught media attention. Gilmore contacted the guy to see if they could use the vocals, and that's when the track was completed. And if you look at publicity photos for the Hey Hey Rise Up single, it's Gilmore, Mason, and two other guys who we do not know. But it's not either Richard Wright nor is it Roger Waters. Roger Waters was doing his own thing. Now, I'm going to ask this one question, and I'm sure everybody else would agree with me on this subject. Don't you think it's time for both Roger Waters and David Gilmour to end their ongoing beef with each other?
It would be nice, but I don't think it's gonna happen.
It would be more than nice for me because, like seeing them together during the Live 8 performance in 2005, I really got teary eyed because finally a band that I have loved along with the Beatles were back together on stage.
And they looked like they enjoyed it.
Exactly. Now, keep this in mind. David Gilmour, he was very hesitant to do the reunion gig. Bob Geldof, who organized Live Aid, he said, he had to make many calls to Gilmour, in which Gilmour finally said, "All right, I'll do it." Blah blah blah. And when they were done with their last song, "Comfortably Numb," Gilmour tried to walk off stage, immediately until we noticed Roger Waters bringing him, come on, man." So Gilmour walks on stage with the rest of the band, and that's when that famous photo was shot of them, all four of them together, saying thank you to the crowd, taking their bows. And they did some other photo shoots together. In fact, there are other photos of them together having wine, having doing a gathering, such and such. In fact, let me see if I can find photographs of this together there. I'll let you take the reins, Ark.
Well, I don't know. I don't have anything that I can
Hmm.
add at this point, but
Well, let me say this. Let me, as I type down these words, I do know that the group Dream Theater did their version, a live performance of Dark Side of the Moon, and you know what?
mm,
They did a good job at it. No doubt about that.
yeah, there's actually I think it's an Australian group
Hmm.
that's kind of like a Pink Floyd clone
Yep.
that they've released a lot of things that are Pink Floydish.
Yeah, there are many. I know YR saw a group called Texas Floyd not too long ago. He has the whole full concert uploaded on his channel, Hockey Entertainment Channel 360. Go definitely check it out, folks. They do a lot of Floyd, and I guess so. Let me find one of these photographs. Give you a few minutes here. There they are. Now, now, Gilmore's and Water, they actually appeared with each other's projects. Gilmore was doing a benefit performance, some benefit show there, and Waters came on stage unexpectedly. And in return, Gilmore appeared at Roger Waters' performance of The Wall, doing, of course, comfortably done from atop the wall. There's video footage of this, and when Gilmore was presented, the audience erupted in applause. Yay! Because this was a good thing. This is
Yep.
about time, man. About time, everybody. Let me find the let me see this. Let me find one of the photographs right here.
I think there's some political stuff going on between them because I think it was Gilmore's wife
Yes,
made
Holly
some.
Sampson. She
Yeah.
called out Roger Waters for his opinion and some of his speeches that he did for the United Nations during the Russian Ukrainian conflict. And she called him out big time to be exact. Roger, you're this. Roger, you're that. You're egotistic, SOB, blah, blah, blah. And in fact, it fits to say that a lot of times Waters is very egotistic. There was this one individual who had said he couldn't stand Roger Waters because of this reason. And let's not forget, Waters, in various interviews in the past, according to Gilmore, stated he was the reason why Pink Floyd was so successful when he may have not been.
Yeah, it was a group effort.
Exactly. It's all four of those guys. No doubt about that. Let me find this one photograph. Let me see here. Want to give me a couple minutes? I'll show it to you. That's for sure. There we go. I'm going to download this sucker right now. It should be coming up. Working on it. There we go. Bing bam boom. Now we're ready to roll. It should be downloading right now. And when it comes about, I'll definitely show it to you for sure. All right. But it would be nice for Gilmore and Waters to finally say, have a sit down, have a talk, instead of yelling, instead of throwing curse words at each other like they did in front of Bob Ezrin after the release of The Wall. It would be nice, when you think about it, it would be nice
Yeah.
for those guys two to finally, just let me say here, let me blah blah. I'm gonna try to in the Skype chat here that we got, but it's not allowing me for some dumb wad reason. But it would be nice for those two to finally make amends with one another because it's getting to the point now where they're just feuding just for the sake of feuding,
Yeah.
and,
That's why I don't think they ever will get together.
which is sad. It's really sad because like who knows? One of them could go, one of them could pass on, and nothing more regrettable than not being able to make amends with someone before their passing. Take, for example, Phil Samo from Pantera. He wanted to bury the hatchet between himself and their drummer, Vinnie Paul. Vinnie Paul was like no go when it came to that. And it's sad that Vinnie Paul had to die bitter and angry at Phil like he was. And it would be a hard thing. It's a hard pill to swallow for the other individual who would like to make amends with that person. Like
Yeah.
if I like for example, me and Minnesota Vikings fan, we're not friends no more, but it would be nice for him and I to have a sit down and have a talk about what the hell went wrong because he could pass away any minute, and I'd be sad that I was not able to make amends with the guy. I would like to, but he's too bitter at me and everybody else. So there you go.
Yeah. I mean, yeah,
Yeah, it's true. Yeah,
not much I can add to that.
I know. I think we all agree on it. Let's see if I can. I'm unable to show that photograph. Give me a couple minutes, folks. All right, so I guess I'll probably close out our look at Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd.
Okay, and I think tomorrow, didn't we want to discuss, I guess, celebrities that passed in 2023?
Yes, that was YR's request.
And
And
hopefully he'll be here.
I'm gonna leave a message with him right now. I did leave a message about doing it tomorrow night, and he did say yes. And I'm gonna contact him, leave a message with him tonight after we're done with this recording, and we'll see how it goes out. All right,
Yeah, and what do we want to do next week
all right.
on Wednesday?
Next Wednesday. Oh, which album would you like to spotlight? You let me know
Hmm.
because many of the
There's a lot of
albums
decent choices.
we talk about the first Boston album, since we already mentioned that in the beginning of the show, if you like.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Okay, gotcha. Next Wednesday night for Music Maniacs, our look at influential albums continues. We'll be taking a look at Boston album number one, released in 1976. We're going to talk about the songs at that album, as well as how it was made and such. And we're going to be discussing everything else in between.
Yeah.
All right, there. So for Arknolia and myself, thank you for listening to this program. And once again, take care of one another and take care of yourself. And if it all goes well, we'll be doing this tribute special on the following evenings, Thursday night, with us and YR. All right.
Yeah.
I'll let I'll let you know, Ark, and what YR has to say. All right.
Okay, well, we can still do it regardless, but I would like our wire to be there.
Yes, I would absolutely. All right. So, for Ark and myself, you guys enjoy the rest of your Wednesday evening. Take care, brothers. Bye bye.